Scythe, everyone knows this card's nuts. It lines up Wolfsbane, lines up Scorch, lines up Shiru, lines up Scorch, lines up Scorch, lines up Shiru, lines up Wolfsbane, lines up Igni, lines up Professional, lines up Scorch, lines up Shiru. Did I mention it lines up Scorch? Also, you have a million mulligans. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Does it line up Shiru, though? Oh, I may have forgotten to mention that it lines up Shiru. Regis and Epidemic. Oh, yeah, those two. If a card benefits from being lined up, it probably benefits from your leader being Eithne. Bruverhoog. Move a unit to the other row. If it's an enemy, damage it by 2. If it's an ally, boost it by 2. Charges 3. So unlike Eithne, you get 3 charges forever, which is sort of both like a good and a bad thing. On one hand, you can save all of these charges for 1 round if you're able to, and you get like a sort of 6-point burst play with your Bruver, which sounds worse than it actually is, because the movement's relevant too, right? And the ability to split this up is also relevant. Like, being able to choose how you distribute your Bruver charges is relevant in comparison to Eithne. But the thing is, you rarely need more than 3 Eithne charges, and each of these charges is definitely worth more than 2 points on average. Even if you're just lining up a Wolfsbane with an Eithne charge, you're getting 3 points on the charge. And a lot of the time you're lining up something that's more impactful than that, like a Shiru or a Scorch. If you're playing Dragon's Dream, the movement's worth like 5. You can disrupt enemy engines that are row-locked, which makes the movement worth whatever the round length ends up being. Yeah, I don't know. I like Gruber. I think he's pretty solidly the second best Scoia'tael leader. He's got a lot of utility. It's just kind of overshadowed by how powerful this ability is. Francesca and River doesn't see more play after Eithne there. They're underrated as it is. Yeah, I kind of agree. I've had some pretty good success playing a Francesca deck over the last few days. Philovandrel, something, something. Boost all units in your hand by 1. So, it's sort of like a 10-point one-shot leader, except the distribution is kind of awful. Like, if you don't use this in round 1 and you don't win round 1, your opponent can bleed you and your leader ability becomes pretty worthless. And if you do use this in round 1, then you don't have a leader in round 3. Really, the only good thing about this leader is the 4 mulligans. It enables some bronzes, but those bronzes aren't particularly good anyway, even if you work to enable them. And really, as big as 1 mulligan is, you're like almost giving up your leader to get 1 mulligan when you compare it to like Bruver or Eithne. These are just so much more impactful abilities than boosting your hand by 1. You should let him boost a card in hand by 1 and give him 8 charges. I could see that. That'd be kind of cool. Him being a one-shot's really awkward. The only problem with that is that you're making him a little bit too similar to Woodland Spirit. Maybe if you like capped it, you could only boost a certain card once. So that you can't just save all your charges for a finisher. Honestly, currently Handbuff doesn't really work. Well, he also doesn't really represent good carryover like Handbuff is supposed to. Because you're going to have to play a lot of cards in your hand. So really, I mean, he's also not carryover because you're using your leader ability. Like, while Handbuff is generally a carryover mechanic, this application of it isn't. Like, it's bad tempo, it's bad carryover. It's just, like, really awkward points spread out over the course of a couple rounds. He's not even full 10 points. If you don't, yeah, if your hand's not full with units, you're not even getting the full 10. The idea in hand of some cards in hand give you +2 on the boost. Yes, but there's not enough of those that are actually good. Using Phil Evangel on Skags makes your Skags break even. You're getting 8 for 8. You need to hand buff it again to be getting value. If the payoff cards with Phil Evangel were more exciting, then maybe. It's just the payoff cards aren't exciting enough. Really, the only cool thing about this card is the 4 mulligans. Wait, where'd Francesca go? Oh, I skipped Francesca. Or play a special card from your graveyard. This card's super cool. It's a leader that's actually worth just a full card. Unfortunately, 3 Ithne shots end up being worth more than a full card, and you're sacking a mulligan. Like, all the good leaders are really worth more than a full card on average. Like, Croc certainly is, Ithne certainly is. What are the other good leaders in the game? Oh, Morvran certainly is. And all of these leaders have more than 2 mulligans. The other problem is that you have to actually draw and include these high power, high provision special cards in your deck. So you sort of gotta build around Ragnarok, you gotta build around, like, enabling Scorches. You gotta build around making sure, like, Commander's Horn is live, just so that you actually have something big to play off of your Francesca. Because you don't want to just, like, replay a Mahaka Mail with your leader. That's just not exciting. You need to play something big for this to be worthwhile. And with only 2 mulligans, you end up running into an issue where, like, you draw the wrong special card for a matchup. Like, you'll draw Scorch against Ithne, and it'll be the only special card that you draw all game. And you get 2 Scorches, but what does Scorch do in that matchup? Or you'll draw Commander's Horn against Control, and you have a really awkward time even getting, like, 9 points out of your Commander's Horn. You'll draw Ragnarok against a Broover deck, and you just have no way of keeping things in the Ragnarok. If Francesca had 3 mulligans, she'd be a lot better. A mulligan is just such a big deal. Oh my, a mulligan is such a big deal. Okay. Yorveth's Gambit. If you have 4 or more traps in your starting deck, play 2 of them at random. Scorch needs to go from Gwen. I would just like to see the initiative keyword. I like that idea. I think that solves a lot of issues. Play 2 of them at random. I mean, traps just suck. You're paying 14 provisions to get 2 cards out of your deck. That's not terrible. It's pretty good rate. The problem is that the cards you're getting out of your deck aren't really cards that you want to put in your deck. Like, for some reason, this is a 6 provision card now. It's an Alzur's Thunder that your opponent can play around. It's a Lacerate that generally just dies to Frenzied Dow. It's literally Morin Forest Child. And this card's cool, but if your opponent respects it, which they will if you've played other traps this game, it's like just as bad as Incinerating Trap. Pitfall Trap's, like, bonkers when your opponent doesn't think you're playing it, and they save, like, their big finisher creature for last. But if they're expecting Pitfall Trap, and you just, like, save a 4 in your hand, this card is so embarrassing. All these traps are so embarrassing if your opponent just respects you. Oh, and this is an 8 for 9. Hooray. It's like if Vernon Roche was made worse. Ithlin. Boost a Scoia'tael unit in your hand by 4. So it's the Scoia'tael version of Triss Butterflies. It's much better in Scoia'tael. You can buff your Shear up to 6. And buffing a Shear up to 6 alongside with some Ithne charges gives you the ability to pretty much set it up on any number from 5 to 4, depending on what your opponent's board is. You don't even need this to be carryover for it to be valuable. When you're making a 6-point Shiryu, your Shiryu is often going to be worth 20 plus points. Fairly easily. Just is that at random? Yes. Triss is random. This is only boost Scoia'tael, so you get to pick. Some units should have ambushed 2, making them artifacts only is not a good move. I don't think I agree with that. Because right now, you know that you can use artifact removal on an ambush. Because they're all artifacts. If only some of them are artifacts, you don't know if you can target the artifact. I think it's probably good that the interaction with them is consistent. Rather than, like, sometimes you're going to play this artifact removal. You're going to try to target the ambush unit, it doesn't let you, and then you, like, right-click the artifact removal back to your hand. Or, like, in some situations you play artifact removal, your opponent doesn't have another artifact in play, so it just, like, makes you play it. It doesn't do anything. Trap shouldn't be artifacts in the first place. That's an argument I could see. I could see that. Just, like, have them be their own type of card. Weak ambush is lockable instead of relying purely on artifact removal. Except you can't lock an artifact. So there's going to be like this weird 50-50 where like sometimes you're going to be able to target this card with a lock and sometimes you're not going to be able to target this card with a lock. Trap should be played around, not against. Honestly, if you can't blow up the Lacerate trap, I agree with you, except with this card. I think you'd have to kind of rework this if you can't interact with it. Maybe just like up its provision by like 1 or 2. I guess 1. Like Lacerate's already like almost playable at 7. In Scoia'tael, the movement faction, a trap version of Lacerate for 1 less provision is kind of good, and you can't pop it. But yeah, I don't entirely disagree. I just think that you would need to rework it a little bit. Play 2 artifacts for 2 turns. That's not a thing that most decks are going to have access to. Units are the primary things decks play. You can't just say, LOL, don't play units. It's not really interacting. Shiryu. I don't really have a problem with Shiryu. I don't think a problem with Shiryu is more just like a problem with artifacts. Stuff that makes things way too easy to line up. All the numbers being exactly the same. The fact that the range of power of the cards right now is between like 3 and 5 just makes lining everything up so easy. Did he have Zeal? He's unplayable without Zeal. You could argue, like, should he have Immune? So you can't shoot it with Aithne or buff it with Thunderbolt? Shiryu's no Zeal in PTR? Yes, and he was unplayable in PTR. Yeah, I thought he was a hand buff payoff too. Like, you give him Immune and he's just a hand buff payoff, and I think that's kind of cool. You could also just, like, give him the initiative keyword, like I would do for Scorch. It fixes, like, all of these cards. I guess it fixes Shiryu a lot less than it fixes Scorch, because, like, disaligning a Shiryu is a lot more difficult than disaligning a Scorch. I don't know, like, it sounds like a buff. But just, like, giving this Immune, or something like you yourself can't target this with abilities while it's in play, would go a pretty long way. Call of the Forest still exists? Yeah, you just gotta know to not line things up at 5 then, while Call of the Forest exists. Your opponent can't really manipulate the Shiryu anymore. It's not like when you go Ithlan Shiryu. Your Shiryu can be anything from 3 to 6. If Shiryu's immune, then it's just 6. Or with Call of the Forest, it's just 5. You can't Thunderbolt it, you can't shoot it. Or with Phila, just 3. Yeah, or just 7 with Phila plus Ithlan. Like, it's certainly worse if you can't target it while it's in play, and I think it... I mean, it fits the idea of being a hand buff payoff more if you can't target it while it's in play, for sure. Mass Annihilations in general should just be reworked. Too easy to line up all those 3, 4, 5 units. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think giving like the initiative keyword to stuff like Scorch and Epidemic goes a long way. I don't know how much it matters for stuff like Shiryu and Regis, because you have to have something way more specific than just like a bigger or a smaller unit to disalign Shiryu or Regis. You'd like specific buff effects. But yeah, it does make the game feel really, really swingy right now. Honestly, Shiryu's fine right now. After I think Knife won't be as easy to trigger, so it'll be fine. Possibly. I'd still worry about just like artifacts. Like, Shiryu's kind of the card that makes Artifact Aithne work. It's definitely the biggest payoff in that deck. In isolation, Shiryu's cool. Yeah, it's just all the other stuff that goes with it. It's you can't really identify just like one card as the problem card, because no matter what you change, like, it affects everything else. So, like, could you redesign everything else so that Shiryu's not even a good card anymore? Yeah, pretty easily. Like, if there's no more Ithlan, there's no more Call of the Forest, Aithne is totally reworked, and there's no way to, like, line this up to bigger numbers, then Shiryu's kind of trash. But if we're talking about, like, the minimum number of changes to make this card reasonable, or, like, more reasonable, to make it feel less bad to play against, I don't know. Shiryu's pretty bonkers with Brewer. It's fine with Brewer. You can't line it up as granularly, right? You can only set it on 2, 4, 6, or 8. You can't get the odd numbers. Yeah, I don't know. I guess just the main thing is I don't like how swingy Gwent feels with Last Say. It seems like against a lot of these decks, if your opponent has Last Say, their Last Say is worth pretty easily 20 or more points. And when the average play is like 6 or 7. When Last Say is that big, it doesn't feel very good. It feels like the whole game was just like settled in round 1. Whenever they won last play. Or whenever you won Last Say, in the opposite case. Eastern Games Council. Look at a random Dwarf, Dryad, and Elf from your deck, then play one. So, you want to play this card when you have, like, a lot of Elves, and then exactly one Dryad and exactly one Dwarf. So that you're guaranteed to see the Dryad and the Dwarf. And ideally, that Dryad and that Dwarf should be high impact and something that you want to see. So, if you're playing a French Heska deck, and you're trying to set up Oglace plus Garrison, you might want to play Eastern Games Council in your deck just to more reliably see that Oglace. I was playing Eastern Games Council with Yarpin as my only Dwarf, so I could more reliably open with Yarpin. It's sort of like a cheaper Royal Decree when you know exactly what you're going to want off Royal Decree. Like, if monsters had this, and this card could search for Ruhin reliably, or just gave me like a random bronze, I would play it. It's just there's not really that many decks that need that one of Dwarf or that one of Dryad to function. Could definitely be better in the future. Synthesis. Immune order. Remove this unit's immune status for the remainder of the turn. 8 for 10. Big fat immune dragon. So you can go like turn 1 Milva, turn 2 this, and that's 2 turns where your opponent can't play any kind of damaging effect. So if they have first play into round 3, they have to play a card, you play Milva, they play another card, you play this, and they have to play a third card that isn't just like something that requires you to have something they can interact with on the board. So in like Scoia'tael mirrors, you end up forcing your opponent to play a lot of their bronzes for less than ideal value. You have that kind of plan in round 3. If you're new, this dragon loses immunity. Yes, if you revive anything that has immune, it will lose immunity. Same thing happens with Milva. One of the few cards you're not confident to judge. It's really matchup dependent. Yeah. When you're forcing your opponent to play bad cards, this is great. When you're preventing your opponent from like lining up a Scorch, because this is your biggest unit, this card's great. When you need to go like really tall, and you just want to like buff this with Fryhead Officer, you can remove the immune for a turn, make this an 11. And if that's all you need, that's really great. But it's not the best rate. You're getting 8 for 10, and that's just where the immune doesn't matter. It's not exciting. Also worth mentioning you can play... Yeah, that's the first thing that I said about it. It's still a big body. Yeah, but it's just not that big of a body for how many provisions you're paying. 8 for 10... 8 for 10 is bad rate. Let's be real. Barnabas Beckenbauer. Boost an elf, dwarf, and dryad allied by 2. So there's what, like 2 dryads in the game? Okay. I'm wrong. 8 for 10 isn't bad. It's horrible. Yeah. I mean, if it was a 9 for 10, it would actually be good. So, I don't know. I wouldn't say 1 point off of what you expect is horrible. I think bad is the right word. Elias, damage all damage units by 1, boost all boosted units by 1. I think every time my opponent played this, it was a 5-point card or worse. I saw so many just like super embarrassing Eliases. It's like actually symmetrical. If this were 5 provisions, it would be worse than Forktail. They could cut this card's provisions in half. Okay. Paulie Dahlberg. Boost the unit on the left by 4. Give the unit on the right immune. It's a really expensive Avalak, or it's a really expensive Nenike. Neither of those are great. Probably get around feature sheer immunity. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. You have a pretty big window to interact with the poly. You still don't get like a lot of granularity. Like 4 is a huge number to boost by. It goes from 2 to 6. From 6 to 10. Meh. Gabor. Gain resilience. Gain immune. Whenever you play a dwarf, boost self by 1. So, this dude's a 5 for 10. And sure, you have the option to put him in melee and gain resilience. That's cool. That's worth something. This card's a 4 for 7. It boosts on more stuff. Now, granted, Milva's also just really good. Comparing any card to Milva isn't really fair. In a dwarf deck, it's actually pretty good. It's just kind of funny that Gabor is this, which is like the archetype card. You have to play dwarfs for this to be good. And Milva, the much more generic card, it's just so much better. You play it in dwarfs. You don't really play it anywhere else. Eastern Grim boosts all other elf allies by 1. Whenever you play an elf, boost self by 1. Everyone here has psychological problems with Shiru. See a doctor, don't take it out in the cards. What? There's definitely a gameplay problem with the pattern of like Shiru with Last Say blowing up entire boards. I think it is fair to be concerned Shiru is a card in the game in its current form. I don't know. So like, it's an engine that you can play early or late, which is kind of cool. It's just kind of overcosted for what it does. It makes you play a lot of elves, and it kind of wants them to live. So if you're expecting elves to live, you play this late. If you're expecting your opponent to have like a couple points of removal, you're gonna want to play this. Wait. I said that backwards. If your opponent has a lot of removal, this card just sucks. There's no way around it, because the Eastern Kingdom's just gonna die. Why does this have 2 modes? What do these 2 modes even do for you? What situation? I guess against, like... No. It just, like, gives you the option to play it early. This game's really good when you pull in from Call of the Forest for finisher. Assuming you have a lot of elves in play. Even then, like, you can just pull Yavin. And you're getting the same value for less provisions, as long as you have a target. Either first card on the board or last card on the board. Well, or anywhere in between, too. Like, it doesn't matter when you play Isengrim. Don't think it's good. Yeah, I think it probably just costs too much. No one plays it. Aglace. On turn end, double the amount of boosts on self. You can hand buff it, you can garrison it. I was trying to, like, use this with Brewer and artifacts. It's just not enough. You really need, like, a huge boost to make this worthwhile. Like, just artifacts aren't really enough. Just Brewer isn't really enough. Brewer plus artifacts wasn't really enough. But if you got, like, Thunderbolt Potion and Garrison, this starts to make a little bit more sense. Like, you need to boost this by at least 8 in one turn for it to be break-even. And you're going to want to boost it by a lot more than 8 for it to be good value. Card can be bigger than the opponent's board if you have less say. Yeah. Typical win more card. It's not a win more card, it's a win condition card. I don't know why you'd say this is win more. Win more would be like, if your opponent's board is empty, gain 20 points. Or if you're ahead by 30 points, get 20 points. Something like that I would call win more. This isn't really win more, this is just a way to get more points. It doesn't say you have to be already winning. And nothing about this card implies that you're already winning. Unless you think, like, having a garrison in your graveyard implies that you're winning, which seems kind of silly. Having Thunderbolt Potion in play and having it survive implies that you're winning, which also doesn't seem correct. Call of the Forest. You can send off Aileron and it comes back out immediately. You can pull Shiru and have Shiru be 5. It's a toolbox card. You can find your artifact removal. Yeah, if you're playing this, you're trying to send back Aileron. It's the best value you're getting. Basically is a 6 provision Royal Decree for elves because it boosts by 3 as long as you're shuffling back Aileron. If Aileron's damaged, it's even better. This card can be really nutty. Mana card, boost by 3 cheaper than the other tutor. Yeah. Well, you do shuffle a card back. So you do want to be sending either something small back or Aileron. So you can shuffle back, like, Vryhead Neophyte. It's good there. But even then, like, you're only really boosting by 1 because you're getting rid of 2 points. This is in the right spot. Yeah, I kind of agree. I have no problem with Call of the Forest. The card's cool. Albrecht is cheaper. Albrecht doesn't get you the card immediately. This gets you the card immediately. That's huge. The cards honestly are hardly comparable. Malcolm Horn. Your opponent passes, boost adjacent units by 4. Hey, Gyarados, what's up? If your opponent doesn't expect it, I guess you get them with the Bamboozle sometimes. I don't know. It's an 8 for 9. For this card to be good, you're really relying on Surprise Factor. It gets fucked by Artifact removal. Harder than, like, everything else. I don't know. Why would you... I guess if you really want to play Yorvet's Gambit, this is probably one of the artifacts you play. As for Call of the Forest, if anyone played Birthing Pod at MTGA, you should know how good that card is. That's not really fair, because Birthing Pod cheats on mana too, which isn't really a concept in Gwent. Like, I played Pod in Modern. That deck was a lot of fun, and definitely very good. But it's not the same. It's also every turn instead of just once. Birthing Pod is significantly worse than Eldritch Evolution. An Eldritch Evolution cheats by 2 mana. Like, I'll agree with you, if this was an artifact with an order that did this every turn, it would be bonkers. Like, absolutely insane. But it's not. It doesn't do that. You do it once. Comparing it to Birthing Pod's not really fair. Also, Birthing Pod was usually setting up combo decks. You don't really have any of that in Gwent right now. Where are we? Okay, Mahkamorn, Zoltan Chevet. Destroy a unit with power less than or equal to the number of dwarf allies. So if you have 4 dwarfs in play, I'm assuming he counts himself like Gaven does. Cards in the same faction tend to be coded similarly, I think. So if you have 3 dwarfs in play, you play him and you can destroy a 4. Black Rayla doesn't. Black Rayla's in another faction, though. It seems like cards are coded somewhat consistently within their own faction. Actually, that's a lie. No, that's not true at all. Because Wild Hunt Rider versus Wild Hunt Hound. This is worded as Rayla. It's also worded as Yavin. They're worded the same way. Yeah, I don't know. 4 dwarves in play is a pretty big ask. And that's only to get break even. Even says every... Oh, wait, this one does say allies. This one does say allies. No, you're right. You're right. Wait, no, this one says elf ally. Wait, what does Black Rayla say? Is there a difference there? I'm actually curious now. I didn't check that. There's no way that's consistent. That's such a weird distinction. What? Black Rayla's a 7? Number of human allies. Number of dwarf allies. Every. There's a difference between number of and every. I can't say that makes a lot of sense, but I guess I believe it. Lord decides with the raid. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Now I'm curious how Sultan works. You're talking about birthing pod, you meant natural order? Yes, in Legacy, tutors are insane. That's why demonic tutor has to be banned. What the fuck? When you can cheat any of, like, what, like 18,000 different cards into play, it's going to be broken, yes. Matchmaker's not even that good. No one plays it in Legacy anymore. Someone test this. Part of me really wants it to be consistent. Ailorin. If on turn end you control 5 or more elf allies, summon this from your deck to the melee row. It is a harder to pull roach that has an extra point and gets called the forest synergy. It's like sort of the reason to play a ton of elves alongside Rhyhead Vanguard. There's like just enough payoffs for being all elf that stuff like Ida actually becomes playable, despite just being a worse Frenzy DAO and everything except tag. Yeah, Roach is really good. A Roach with 1 more point, even though it's a little situational, it's still really good. Also, it's an upside that you can control, sometimes not come out early. Yeah. Sometimes that is an upside. You can sort of do the same thing with Roach too, if you just like keep it in your opening hand. But yeah. When every unit in your deck is an elf, like most of the Aileron decks, it becomes a lot harder to stop your Aileron from coming out. Every means counting himself. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is that actually consistent? I'd be interested to see. Saskia. Damage an enemy by 2. Cooldown 4. If you have an elf, dwarf, or dryad in your hand, decrease cooldown by 1 for each. So it's like a Sabbath that gets worse as the round goes on. And there's also only, what, 3 dryads in the game, we said? I'm not big on these 5 for 9 engine dudes. At least with Sabbath, you have Eridan to protect it. It's also probably an easier condition than having an elf, dwarf, or dryad in your hands. Just having the tallest unit. Maybe Dragon Tide matters at some point. I mean, it matters now. Sultan counts himself. Just tested. Take that, people who think there's consistency in card texts. Just proves Rayla's inconsistent. Well, no, because if Zoltan didn't count himself, he'd be consistent with Rayla. Zoltan, what? One of you guys is lying. I'm going to assume that Swansong said it first and he's not lying. Call me insane, but as the game goes, Mullane will need to be nerfed because all cards being much worse. No, because they're just gonna print more good cards. It's an elf that's like not even necessarily better than Kirinix. And Kirinix really isn't that good, it's just every other card sucks. The more good cards that we get, the less cards like this look auto-include. Because what, it's an 8 for 9, and sure, some of that's in removal, and it's probably taxed appropriately. So you're getting good value, even though you're only getting 8 points. And the versatility of being able to like kill a bunch of Neckers or kill all the Germain tokens is good. But it's not quite the same as just like Kirinix sometimes getting 4 extra points. I don't know, I mean, the card's good. It's an elf. Being an elf matters a lot. It matters for Swordmaster, it matters for Vanguard, it matters for Aileron. And just in general, one of the higher point elves that you can play, so. And 4 happens to be a sweet spot removal number for now. You don't think it's good? Mullane is very good in elf decks. Outside of elf decks, it's kind of just like a worse Kirinix, kind of, depending on how much you value this range mode ability. But definitely in an elf deck, you want to be playing Mullane. And Call the Forest. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things you can call the forest into. When did patch come out? It didn't. This is retrospective card reviews. Elf decks are super all-in on long rounds. That's not true. Only the finishers are. This is much worse than a Seer. This kills engines. This isn't even comparable to a Seer. When Mullane kills a Magna Division... Oh, thanks for the bits, Kirby. Appreciate it. Like, killing Magna Division is worth more than 4 points. Killing Mangonel is worth more than 4 points. Killing a Blue Stripe Commando is worth more than 4 points. Killing a Visigota is worth more than 4 points. I only have 1 hour before server maintenance. I don't know if they'll kick me off Deck Builder. I guess we'll see. If they do, I can go to, like, Gwenti or something. Continue the reviews. Removal can have its downsides, and like Engine Deck's super meta. But 4 isn't really at the point where you're going to start seeing those downsides. And Engine Decks aren't super meta, but a couple of engines in a deck kind of are. Like, Longship doesn't technically like get value by itself, but disabling Longship is worth some number of points because it makes their Wolfsbanes worse, makes their Wild Boar harder to turn on, all that stuff. Magna Division is certainly meta engine. Elven Swordmaster is certainly a meta engine. It's not like you're gonna have difficulty finding a way to deal 4 damage, and if you are, you certainly won't have a difficult time dealing 4 damage to 4 enemies, or 1 damage to 4 enemies. If it happens you don't have proactive plays? Sure, but Mullane isn't the card that I'd cut. Like, you can say that about any removal card. Like, you're making the argument that, like, static proactive points is better than removal. Which, I mean, I would assume most people should reasonably disagree with you. Like, sure, in some situations, as a head-to-head, this card trades poorly with a Seer. But that's not the only thing that matters. Xavier Moran. Whenever this unit receives a boost, boost it by an additional 2. So when I was playing the Agles deck, when I was trying to use Broovers and Thunderbolt potions to make Agles big, I very quickly realized that this card was just a strictly better Agles, and it still wasn't very good. It's 1 less provision and has 2 points. The thing is, you can't like use Garrison and double a Garrison. But every time that you're trying to use like a small boost, whether it be 1 or 2 points, this basically does the same thing Agles does with that small boost. Sometimes more. Lane is like Vest with better card type, 1 more provision, and power, better second ability. Honestly, yeah. I do find that the dealing 1 to a bunch of things is more relevant than giving something Zeal. At least in the decks that I tend to play Vest in. Why is this row locked? Oh, wait, this is actually worse with Brewer, because it's melee locked. I didn't realize that. This really shouldn't be row locked. It's kind of sad. I guess if you play it on ranged, Brewer move. Wait, Brewer move. On those 3 movements, you're getting 10 points. You get 4 additional. It's kind of sad. Use this card as an engine. Yeah, you can play this like with Wyvern Scale Shield. You're getting points every turn on it. The only problem is that you end up going really tall, which makes you weak to stuff like Professional, Igni, Scorch. All fairly common cards right now. I think this wasn't Urlock in PTR. Yeah, I don't remember. It's not bad if you play it and Agles since your opponent needs 2 big removal. They don't necessarily need 2 big removal. They just need 1 big removal and enough points to beat the Agles. Like, that's the thing about this sort of stuff. You never need to answer them. You could just be doing something more powerful proactively. Maybe they considered it to work with hand buff. Yeah, maybe. That would be very good if it worked with hand buff. Very different card. Yorveth. Return an allied trap to your hand, then play a trap. I don't know, this card's really funny. You can have, with like 2 last says, or I guess your last 2 plays when your opponent has last say, you can go like Pit Trap, Yorveth, Pit Trap, and try to invalidate their last 2 plays. It's sort of like a Camby. So if you're only behind like 2 points, you get to win with Yorveth. The issue is like if they're saving a special card, you look really dumb. And that happens quite a bit if your opponent's respecting Pit Trap. I don't know, it's probably bad, but it's funny. I don't think there's any other traps that you really want to return and replay. Incinerating Trap is pretty garbage when your opponent knows you have it. You can never replay the Horn, because it's always face down until the end of a round. The Lacerate Trap, you likely don't have time to trigger that twice meaningfully. So it's really just like Serpent or Pit Trap. And Pit Trap's probably the only one you're getting value out of twice. Meh. Now, speaking of Pit Trap, we kind of already talked about Pit Trap when we talked about Yorveth's Gambit. The card's cool. It's just, once your opponent knows it exists, they just don't save their finisher for last in a lot of situations. You can kind of get people if you're playing the artifact deck, because you tend to want to save your Witchers for last play, just because the artifact deck isn't that good at making a huge point gap difference. It usually just wins by a few points. So just like saving a big tempo play for last often wins you the game. But if your opponent like gets ahead and then plays Pit Trap and you intended to take with Witchers with your last play, like if they have like a Scoia'tael ticking and your plan is just to discard all your cards and then play Witchers to win, you can get got by Pit Trap. The other cool thing about Pit Trap is it doesn't actually die to most artifact removal, because it destroys it before it triggers any abilities. If your opponent plays a Frenzied Dow to try to pop this, Pitfall Trap will just kill the Frenzied Dow. Same thing with any of the other unit-based artifacts, artifact removal. Card's pretty good. Yeah, it gets worse the more people expect it. Like, I think most of the time Pitfall Trap gets played against me, I'm able to just make it kill a 4 that I don't really care about. And similarly, most of the times that I ended up playing Pitfall Trap, even when I wait to the end, it's either my opponent saves a special for last, or they saved a 4. So you end up playing it with like 3 cards left in their hand, and you just hope that you get something, and most of the time you don't get anything reasonable. Yeah, I've never been excited by it. Moran, deploy melee, damage enemy by 2, deploy range, lock a unit. In terms of locks, I generally like the other Scoia'tael lock a little bit more than this. Generally, if I'm playing a Scoia'tael deck, the movement means something, as does the elf tag, which this card has neither of. Or should I artifact removal is not destroying it? Yeah, 100%. The only upside this has is that if you don't need the lock, you can get 7 out of this. It's just that, like, 2 damage doesn't usually kill things. Now, granted, if you need to kill a thing, you could lock the thing. So, it's sort of just like a way to give you points when you don't need the lock, rather than, like, an extra removal mode. I don't know, the Dryad tag makes me not want to play this most of the time. Not being an elf is a pretty huge drawback. If this were an elf, I'd like it a little bit more. Scoia'tael. Damage unit by 1. Cooldown 1. It's a, it's like a botchling that doesn't tick immediately and doesn't heal itself. Remember the time when you played Pit Traps against big monsters, you smashed 2 of his biggest ghouls with Pit Trap? Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. I don't know, I played against big monsters I think 2 times while I had Pit Trap in my deck over the last couple weeks, and they always just like saved a Necker Warrior. It felt so bad. The cooldown gets reset if you play a trap. Oh wait, really? I actually didn't know that. That's interesting. I mean, that still doesn't really make him good. He's just so much worse than Botchling. In a faction that already has a lot of removal, too. Like, you don't need this in your Scoia'tael deck. You're already killing everything. Ida, I mean... Man... It's a good thing this has the elf tag. Like, if we compare Ida to Frenzied Dow... So this is a 7 for 8 that destroys an enemy artifact. Ida is either a 7 for 8 or destroys an artifact. Thankfully, the elf tag matters a lot. It means you can call the forest for it, you get extra points on your vanguards, you get extra points on your swordmasters. To the point where if you're playing an elf deck, it's a very, very real consideration to play Ida over Frenzied Dow. Even though it's that much worse than Frenzied Dow and everything except tag. The buff helps. The buff sometimes has some utility, yeah. It's just so much worse than Frenzied Tao. The thing is, though, when you're destroying an artifact with Ida, you're just happy to be destroying an artifact. It's just a high impact, powerful ability that it doesn't really matter that you're not getting the 3 extra points most of the time. It's not a bad elf card. No, it's really not. It's just bad in comparison to one of the best cards in the game that happens to do something similar at the same provision cost. I've played it. Scoia'taels. Boost an ally by 1 for each elf ally. Oh, hey, Shinari. What's up? Okay, so does this one work like Yavin? Or does this one work like Black Rayla? This one says each dwarf ally. Yavin says every elf ally. Zoltan says number of dwarf allies. And we've already confirmed that none of this is consistent in its phrasing. I mean, I guess kind of confirmed. I'm not really sure who I trust in my chat. Three different wordings, 2 different functionalities, 0 consistency. So chat, why hasn't there been a single Gwent tournament since I'm coming? There were none scheduled. They were always taking time off the Gwent Master Circuit. The next tournament is February? I think January is the next Pro Ladder season that matters. And then February has the next tournament. Yeah, so assuming this counts itself, if dwarf cards were better, this would be kind of interesting. If it doesn't count itself, it's a lot worse. Oh, December matters too? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Just count towards the next Gwent Open. Oh, wow, I just had all my dates wrong. Okay. I thought the next Gwent Open was in February. Can't even really swarm dwarves. Yeah. Like, for cards like this to be good, there kind of have to be better dwarves. Right now, the dwarf cards aren't very good. And we'll get more into that later, I guess. Brian, you control 2 or more dryads, gain zeal. If you control the only other 2 dryads in the game, gain zeal. Order. Damage an enemy by 1. Charge 3. I think this is the first time that I ever read past this first line. But does it count itself? I don't know. I really don't know. This one doesn't say allies, so who knows? We got another instance of wording. Barclay counts himself. Okay, good to know. Good to know. So what is it? Each is currently 50-50. Oh no, number is currently 50-50. Rayla says number, Zoltan says number. Rayla doesn't count itself, Zoltan does. Yavin is every and counts itself. Barclay is each and counts itself. You want to test Brian? Does the instance of the word allies matter? But yeah, we even if this just like had order seal, like if this deploy wasn't there and it just had zeal, it's still kind of trash. If you need to deal 3 damage, there's plenty of bronzes that do that for 5 provisions. I don't know. I'm just having fun making fun of all the inconsistent wordings. I should learn Polish. I don't really want to learn another language. I've learned I'm not very good at that over the years, and I'm okay with that. The text better or more consistent in Polish? That's a good question. Dennis Cranmer. Deploy melee, boost adjacent units by 2. Deploy ranged, boost all other units on this row by 1. Yeah, just compare Yavin, Black Rayla, Barclay, and Zoltan. I believe it was originally written in English and translated. I thought that as well. But I'm not really 100% that's how it was done, so I don't know. Okay, so when you play this melee, you're getting 7. When you put this ranged, you're getting anywhere from like... It's all other units. Why is it other units? So it caps out at 11. And you have to be swarmy. And dwarves don't really do swarmy. When I was playing Dennis in a dwarf deck, I think almost every time I played Dennis, I played it melee. Because I very rarely had enough stuff ranged for it to be worthwhile. She doesn't count herself. Wait, so the one that doesn't say allies doesn't actually need them to be allies? It just needs them... Or no, the one that doesn't say allies needs them to be allies? I'm sorry, CDPR. If you're watching this, I'm not laughing at you. I'm trying to laugh with you. I find this stuff humorous. Don't hold it against me. Deploy melee, damage enemies at the ends of row by 2. Deploy ranged, damage all enemies on a row by 1. So it's either a werecat without thrive, or really it's just points. Like, this isn't generally going to represent meaningful removal. It's like a really shitty version of Old Mullane. Because at least Old Mullane got you value, right? Like, it was worth playing around Old Mullane. This one's just like, even if they have Terubial, you don't really care. Why respect it? So they don't get 7 for 8? I guess you can respect the ranged ability, but even that... What, you have to have 5 units on the road for it to break even? Which cards was it? Yavin, Black Rayla, Zoltan Chevet, and Barclay. Mythical Elias synergy? I guess. I'd rather just play Lacerate, I think, but... Yeah. Man, this guy's so much worse than Lacerate. So, if you're getting to break-even value with this card, your opponent has 5 units on the row, which means your last turn would be a 7 for 10 instead of an 8 for 8 here. I guess if your opponent has exactly 2 or 3 units on the row, you're better off with the melee ability. Man. All cards in Polish say allies. Well, allies isn't the... They all say allies in English, too. Do they have the same, like, linking word? Like, this says each. I don't know what they're technically called in terms of grammar rules. Zoltan says number of. Yavin says every. I'm curious if that's consistent across them all. And I guess while you're there, if you could check Bran and see if this says allies. Anyway, where were we? We were at 2 reveal. Yeah. I don't know, this seems like a... At least it's an elf, right? We've already kind of established why being an elf matters. No. It'll deal 2 damage. Just like old Mullane. Yarpy boy! Yarpin Zigrin. Every turn on turn end, if there are no allied units on the battlefield, boost self by 3. Okay. So, obviously you have, like, the crazy all-in decks that you're just trying to, like, play Yarpin with a bunch of specials and artifacts. Yarpin gets huge, and he gets scorched and you lose. Those decks are funny. You can very easily get, like, a 30-plus point Yarpin. Because you'll end up boosting him with, like, Swallow Potions and Wyvern Scale Shields and all that stuff. But even aside from, like, the meme uses of him like that, if you just, like, play a Yarpin first turn on a round, he's immediately 6. Next turn you play, like, an artifact or, like, a Ragnarug or something like that. It goes up to 9, and you get 9 for 8. Just right there. That's only 1 off turn for you to be getting good value on Yarpin. You're not super vulnerable to Scorch, you just played, like, a 9. Or a Trap. Yeah, you could play a Trap. And then, like, every additional non-unit that you play is just all upside. You don't really feel bad if you play a unit after you've gotten your 9 for 8. If you have to. Is the one problem you just draw your Yarpin? No, because what I'm saying is you don't even have to build around it. You can play this with just, like, 3 or 4 non-unit cards in your deck. Because after you just play him and then one of those, you have good rate on your Yarpin. I'm happy getting a 9 for 8. Especially there's potential to very easily get 12 if I have another special. Or artifact or trap or anything like that. I think this card's, like, secretly pretty underrated. It's just kind of hard to find that sweet spot, and there's not really a deck that wants him. Like, you can't play him in the all-in artifact deck because he blocks your Scorch. You obviously can't play him in, like, Elves because it doesn't play any special cards. You can try to play him in Francesca, but Francesca's generally playing Scorch too. So you really just have the one Ragnarug. Wording's exactly like English, so let me translate it from English. Okay, okay. Oh, they have different languages on Gwent. Okay, cool. You can play this as an artifact, I think at least you could before the hotfix. Yeah, you probably could. The only real risk is that you're turning off your Scorch, right? I guess it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I think this card is just... It's better than people give it credit for, it just doesn't really have a home. I don't think it's purely just a meme card. I'd give this like as a card, I'd give this like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Sheldon Skaggs. Damage an enemy by this unit's power. So if you hand buff him up to 4, you're getting 8 for 8. It's just so much work. And then, like, what if you top deck him in round 3? Yeah, it feels like over nerfed into oblivion. What a poor guy. In PTR, he was what, a 4 for 8? His baseline was break even. This guy was nuts. And then they did this. So if we look at like Elven Swordmaster from before, right? And like old Gwent. Elven Swordmaster was effectively a 10 baseline. And when the average bronze value was like 13, it wasn't even like the worst card in the world when you weren't hand buffing it. Here, this card is like half what you expect when you're not hand buffing it. Agitator makes this card playable. I mean, it puts this card to a baseline power level. I wouldn't play this if my only way to buff it is Agitator. One nice thing about it only being 2 power is that if you're playing King of Beggars, this will probably eat the King of Beggars buff. He's really good with Ithlin. I mean... Is he? That's what? 19 provisions. You're getting 5 plus 6 plus 6. 5 plus 12. 17. This plus Ithlin is not even cheating on value. Right? Ithlin's 11, so 19. You're getting 12 plus 5, 17? Oh, I still have my thing at Northern Realms. We've been in ST for a while. I said pretty good things about Hensel. I think he is the best one-shot leader. It's just that you have to play Northern Realm cards. And Northern Realm cards were... Let's just say I laughed a lot looking at NR cards. How do you pronounce this name? Lock a unit, move it to the other row. I like this lock. In general, I tend to prefer Derogare over the 5/7 faction locks, just because I value the card efficiency a little bit higher. But in this case, the movement tends to matter in your Scoia'tael deck, as does obviously the Elf tag. Best lock in the game? Yeah, I think that's true. I certainly can't think of anything that's better. Both the Elf tag and like being able to move things into Rag, or move things into Dragon's Dream, or move things out of Dragon's Dream. It all comes up. I like this card. One of the few cards to carry over its exact text from Old Gwent to Homecoming. Yeah, yeah. I laughed at looking at ST cards too. The laughter over ST cards was very different over the laughter at Northern Realms cards. When I'm laughing at ST cards, I'm kind of laughing at like mostly the wording inconsistencies. When I was laughing at NR cards, I was just directly laughing at them. Just, their power level's a joke. Milva. Immune. Boost self by 1 whenever you play a Scoia'tael unit. Why is this a 4 for 7? This card is costed so aggressively. I don't think it's a bad thing that it is. I'm just kind of surprised. They seem to be so conservative with so many cards. And then there's just like, there's Milva. It is almost impossible for Milva to not get good value. I don't think it's OP. It should be. I completely agree. Yeah, like this is probably what a card should be like. But it's just like, how do we get this? After seeing cards like Sheldon Skaggs, after seeing cards like Teruvial, after seeing cards like Brienne, or like a little bit more obviously. How do we get cards like that after seeing... Oh, not this one. Where is it? Gabor. He's basically the same card with like a little bit of resilience potential, a more specific tag, and more provisions. Like, how do we go from that to Milva? You can play neutral doors. You can play Cleaver. Is there another neutral dwarf that's playable? There might be. I don't know. No, Milva's great. I like Milva. I'm kind of glad it exists. The immune on this... I never feel bad that this is immune. Like, it actually feels fair that this is an immune card. Which is kind of weird. Because normally I kind of hate the immune keyword. You think they should go back to the inflated value of cards? Deflation was a really bad idea. Tiro sucks. Yeah, I would like to see cards be bigger. It seems like there are quite a few problems in the game. Or at least things people view to be problems. Just because numbers are so close together. Like, the difference between a 3-point card and a 5-point card in terms of like lining up a Scorch is just like 2 Eithne shots or a bronze being played to line them up. Whereas the range was much bigger, you wouldn't be seeing as many full board Scorches or full board Shearers. And that's not even mentioning like the extra granularity they get of being able to modify these numbers and have each point matter a little less. Like, the difference right now between 1 point is, like, Yavin is a playable card. Humans... You play... I mean, you don't play quite as many humans in Northern Realms as you do elves and Scoia'tael. But the difference between Yavin counting itself and Black Rayla not counting itself is the difference between playability and unplayability. And, like, Yavin's honestly, like, a pretty good card. It's certainly not the worst card in my elf deck. I'm pretty glad that I have it most of the time. I'm usually getting more than his provision value in removal. But that 1 point is just so big. Servers are going to be down in 15 minutes. Yeah, if the deck builder goes off, then I guess I switch over to Gwenti or something. Current costing system, Milva should be an 8, probably still be auto include. I don't really believe in nerfing things that aren't leading to bad gameplay. I think Milva, like, it might be overpowered, but it's not a bad thing that it's overpowered. Malena. Move a unit to the other row on its side. Cool down 2. Why is this a 4 for 7? Couldn't this be a 4 for 4? Like, no problem. It's not like it has zeal. It's not like you're making a strictly better Fryhead Brigade. This just seems like a worse... It just seems terrible. Why would you ever play this? Move unit to the... Oh, wait, the other row on its side. It doesn't charm. If this were to say move it to the opposite row, then it would be like a charm effect. Charming is now called Seize. Not on Shoop, it's not. There's a bit of inconsistency there. When you can move from either side, it doesn't say Seize. Costed decently. I don't think so. This just seems really expensive for an order card. I think even if movement was a solid archetype, this could be a 4 for 4 pretty safely. I don't know why this has to be 7. Maybe a 5 for 4, or a 4 for 5? But 7? Seven? 6 or 7? You could do that too. I'm just saying, like, you could make this a bronze. And it wouldn't be a big deal. It's cool with Brigade. But even then, it has to move Brigade twice to be getting good value. Like, this plus Brigade, once you move Brigade twice with Malena, you've broke even on both cards. You've gotten 6 for 6, you've gotten 7 for 7. Move up to 5 cards in a long round, but it has to live. If it doesn't live, it doesn't do anything. That's like saying Eskel can sometimes be 16 points in a long round. It should cost 16 provisions. You get rewarded when this kind of stuff lives. And there's not even a reward for it. Like, it's a 1 point... Like, what's movement worth? Like, 1 point? Two points when you're moving... I mean, okay, it's not really 1 point. What's it costed at? Generally, like, 1 point? Like, this is worse than Magna Division. Like, if this were a 4 provision for 4, and I had the option to play Magna Division and Scoia'tael over it, I think even in, like, a movement deck, I would still play Magna Division. Oh, and Zeal? Sure, if you give it Zeal, it's very different. It's very different with Zeal. Obviously, like, if it's a 4 for 4 with Zeal, it's just a better Fryhead Brigade. Yeah, 5 for 7 Zeal. You play it, you get a movement effect, and something that your opponent probably wants to answer. I can see that being pretty good. It'd be a cool card. Like, as it is now, it's like a point and, like, an entire proc. Overcosted. Gaven. Deal 1 damage for every elf ally. We kind of talked about this card already, like, on and off. I like it. I play it in my elf deck currently. It counts itself, unlike Black Rayla. Yeah. So if you have 3 other elves in play, which is pretty easy considering Neophyte's a card. You're getting 7 for 7. 4 of it in removal. Get patch notes yet? No, we're getting patch notes within the next 24 hours. Black Rayla doesn't say every. We've been over this. The every doesn't matter. Zoltan also says every and it doesn't work like Black Rayla does. Zoltan says number of. Zoltan says the same thing Black Rayla does. I don't know which one it was, but it says the same thing as Black Rayla. Yeah, it was good. Not much to say. Hawker Smuggler. Every turn on turn end, boost a random unit in your hand by 1. So when it comes down, it is getting 5 points, because it boosts the same turn, so you're getting a 5 for 7. If it dies, you've gotten at least 5 out of it. 4 generally, like, it usually dies, right? Like, you're not expecting this to live. When it does, you're pretty happy. You're getting a good amount of carryover, typically. Every time that I've tried to play a hand buff deck, though, it didn't really work out. My opponent would either be able to bleed me round 1. Like, it's difficult to win round 1 when you're spending all of your time developing carryover, and if you can't win round 1, you're going to get bled round 2. And whenever carryover you made isn't usually enough to stop from losing card advantage. Because it's random, you're going to end up playing some of the cards that you boosted. You can move it, kill it, or lock it. Yeah, that's the other thing. There's a lot of ways to interact with it. You don't even need to kill it. Granted, you are Scoia'tael, so if they move it, you do have access to Dragoon to move it back. But, yeah, there's a lot of ways to interact with it. If this were a 6, I'd like it a lot more. As a 7, it's pretty hard to justify. Should be 5 and not row-locked. That too, you could do that. Actually, I think I like 5 and not row-locked more than I like making it a 6 for vision card. Just because 5 is harder to kill too. Better Swordmaster. Swordmaster's a 4. There's a lot of value in being a 4. In matches where Swordmaster's bad, you don't feel bad about mulliganing it. Because you're generally improving the quality of your hand. When you have to mulligan your 7s because they're bad in the matchup, it feels way worse. Because you invested something in the deck builder into this. Mahakam Marauder. This unit's already boosted gain resilience. I don't know, man. It dies. A, it dies. B, it dies. C, the resilience feels like it never matters. Like, it's not like you can play this in round 2, right? It's not enough tempo, so you're not getting carryover into round 3. And yeah, for carryover, just... I mean, sure, it denies dry passes, but... If they really care about that, they'll just kill it. You can kind of, like, if you high roll really hard, you can go, like, Marauder, Gabor in round 1. And if you're really lucky, you can win that round and push for a 2-0. But I feel like most of the time... Well, A, you have to be on red coin. Or you're probably just going to lose uneven. And none of that carryover matters. And you also have to win that round. Ugh. It's just not enough points. Better after update if control meta gets nerfed. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's like the same problem that like the old resilience units have. Is this really that much better than Mahakam Defender was before? Like, is a 4 with resilience, 4 with situational resilience, really that much better than a 6 that always had resilience. It's a lot of provisions too. Like, this is basically a silver card. I don't know. As much as I want to like carryover mechanics, I think this one's just too weak. I was never impressed when my opponents played it. When I tried to play it, it felt really bad. You could strengthen your defenders too. Yeah, there's no strengthen anymore. So you can't even like use Dennis or Mandrake to get more points there. Yeah, or Barclay. God. Strengthen was such a cool keyword. I'm so sad they got rid of that. It did so many different things. Someone tried to 2-0 you with 2 of this in Phoenix. Yeah. Mirana Runestone. Skip. Serpent Trap. So to be fair, Morin Forest Child was kind of a meme, but there were fewer special cards seeing play back then, because trying to brick Agles was a very real thing anyway. The only issue is that, like, this doesn't... Like, A, it will brick, and B, it doesn't trade that efficiently with most things. In most matchups, you're hoping to tag, like, what, a Wolfsbane? Which, It's also an artifact. Unlike Pit Trap, this one doesn't protect itself. This one will get Frenzied Dowd. There are decks that run no specials at all, though. There's fewer of them now than there were before Homecoming. But yeah, you also don't get the 6 points attached to it that Morin did. In terms of provision efficiency, you can make good trades, but in terms of like card for card efficiency, this is just a hard 1-for-1. Whereas at least Morin Forest Child, you're trading up 6 points on the whole deal. Is the Frenzied Dow my favorite card? No, I just have a lot of respect for the card. I hate Frenzied Dow. But it doesn't change that it's one of the best cards in the game. Vittori. Order. Wow. Cool. Artifact synergy. I don't know, it's a 3. You have to kind of use a potion on it. I don't know, why are we looking at this card? Waylay. Incinerating Trap. Why did this get nerfed? I don't think this card was ever a problem. It's like a worse Alzur's Thunder. It costs 6. And your opponent can play around it. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about all the traps already, right? When we were talking about the Snoom's Meditation. The new Mahakam Defender. Every turn, on turn end, boost self by 1 if this unit's boosted. And by the new Mahakam Defender, I just mean he's not the carryover dwarf anymore. He's not this. The role swapped Mahakam Defender. So in Philavandrel... Okay, so ignoring any points that you use to buff him, if you just assume that he's an engine unit with these stats, he comes down as a 5/6. But really, he's gonna have 6 power, but your opponent only has to deal 2 to him to turn off the engine. It's sort of like... It's like the NR card Anna Strenger, except you're only getting 1 point per turn. But the condition is easier to turn on in Scoia'tael, kind of. But it's half as good. Removal baiter. That's the thing, you don't even need a lot of removal. Usually this is going to be boosted by like 1 in your hand. and then you ping it for 2. And then you're like either playing some kind of artifacts to buff it, or it's just turned off. Or I guess you have like a Dennis Cranmer to buff it. And the card is better if Evangel is better. Yeah, sort of. Or if this card was better, Phil Evangel would be better. But right now, like, this is the value you'd expect to get out of an engine unit if there wasn't a condition on it, right? Like, compare this to Magda Division. Actually, don't do that. You'll just feel bad. It's not Rurlock, it's better than Eskel, except it's easier to turn off than Eskel, just because you can damage it by a smaller amount. Eskel, you need to deal 7-2 to turn it off. You need to deal like 2 or 3 to turn this off. Damage is more common than movement. I'm really just playing Phil Evangel through Officer with this and boost, and now you're playing 2 Sergeants and then it get botched. Yeah. Maybe it is easier to turn on Anna. Oh, is it really easier to turn on Anna than turn on the Hawkman Defender? That's kind of sad. That's really sad. I'm reviewing neutrals too. I reviewed neutrals a couple days ago. I have that whole thing up on my YouTube already. We just have Scoia'tael and Skellige left. We've done all the others. I'm slowly getting these uploaded to my YouTube. It takes a while to clip and render them. Damage a random enemy by 2. Whenever Ryehead Brigade is moved to the other row. Repeat its deployability. Didn't kick me out. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I should be fine in Deck Builder. I think the Deck Builder is just offline. It's not until you like try to queue up that it actually connects to anything. Or like maybe if I were to click the craft button, it would kick me off. I don't know. So there was a list from the RU Gwent Open that was playing Groover with us. The more I played that list, the more I thought Ryehead Brigade was wrong, though. I don't really have much respect for this card. It doesn't seem very good. You play it, you're getting 5 for 6. And then every Brewer charge you use gets an additional point. Every, like, Ryehead Dragoon you play gets an additional 2. Every Brewer charge you use gets an additional 2. It's just, like, it's random enemies. I don't know, When do we get patch notes? Within the next 24 hours. They said Monday. Isn't your favorite non-Alaskan streamer? Wait, who streams from Alaska? It's Monday here. It's Monday here too, but just barely. Damage a random enemy on each row by 2. So this gets fairly reliably 7 for 6. It just doesn't represent actual removal. And at 6 provisions, you're usually wanting to get actual removal. There's also a lot of just like random 1s going around. And then you're only getting 6 for 6 out of this. Eh. I started out having a really high opinion of this card. I was putting it in pretty much every Scoia'tael deck I built. But the more I played Scoia decks, the less and less I wanted a card like Bomber. Impression of details of each change made to every card? No, definitely not. They never do. They'll have details of most of the changes, but don't expect everything to be on the patch notes. Melee. If there is a dwarf on this row, somebody copy this. There is a dwarf. So A, you're melee locked. B, you have to have another dwarf on the melee row. And then you can play this. I had Mahakam Volunteers in a dwarf deck for quite a while. The first 2 games, I didn't realize... Okay, so the first game I played with it, I didn't realize it was melee locked. So I put it on range and I didn't get anything. The next game, I didn't realize there had to be another dwarf on the row. So I played it melee and didn't get anything. And the game after, I thought I just had to have another dwarf in play. So I had a dwarf on range, and then I played Mahakam Volunteers, and I yet again did not get a Mahakam Volunteers. I'm sure the condition isn't actually that hard, I just can't read. The condition's definitely harder than something like Wild Hunt Riders, though, and we're talking about like a 3 for 6 instead of a 4 for 6. The condition is certainly harder than Impera Brigade, and no one really plays Impera Brigade in Nilfgaard decks. So, I don't know, you have to really value this elf tag, or this dwarf tag. Not a last with CDPR tooltip. This isn't about CDPR tooltips. I'm laughing at myself. It was literally just back to back to back, playing a 3-point Mahakam Volunteers. I just could not figure out how this card worked. Bitches Gabor highly. I judged him like middling. He's not bad. He just forces you to play dwarfs. And the other dwarf cards aren't very good. Dwarves have much more card synergy. I mean, soldiers have some synergy too. In Nilfgaard. And I mean, Wild Hunt Rider is just an extra 2 points. Well, as immune, it's generally going to be a worse card than Milva. Is the point that I was trying to make, and most of the time you're going to want it to be immune rather than a carryover. Ryehead Sappers. If you have an elf in your hand, destroy an enemy artifact. This is probably the best bronze artifact removal. The other options are what? It's Battering Ram. What are the other ones called? Yeah, they're all not as good. Yeah, I like it. If you like, this competes for a slot with Ida. It really depends whether you want like an efficient, like a card efficient card, or you just want a card that's like dedicated artifact removal. Like when Ida isn't destroying an artifact, you're much happier to have Ida in your deck. Whereas this card's kind of just like a card you want to mulligan otherwise. It's just how many provisions you have left over. Yeah, it also have the easiest time fitting an artifact removal for sure. Warmonger's so bad. Warmonger destroys attack advantage though. How come Nilfgaard doesn't have bronze artifact removal? I have no idea. It's because they have False Siri. Dol Blithana Archer. Deploy melee, damage enemy by 2, deploy range, damage 2 units by 1. So this guy, at a glance, seems like it's worse than the other 5s you have access to. Where is it? Bowman is generally going to be a 6 for 5 that deals 3. Panther is generally going to be a 6 for 5, and really the non-Scoia'tael doesn't matter too much. Even against Scoia'tael, you can generally find a target. Whether it be like Roach or Witchers. But one thing that this card does very well is this ranged mode. There were enough people on ranked playing decks with Necker in them that if you're not an Eithne deck, like if you're trying to play Francesca, having Archer to ping off both of the neckers ends up being game winning in some situations. Also, because this hits two things for one, you can use this as like one of your ways to line up Wolfsbane if you're not Aithne. Like if you're trying to be Francesca Wolfsbane, you can use archers to line them up more easily than you could use something like Panther. But it really depends what you're looking for. If you just want like utility removal, or if you want points. This does something that no other card in your deck really does. Where these are generally just like, they kill a 3 and have points. Dwarven Merc. Damage an enemy by 1, charge 1, gain 1 charge whenever you play a dwarf. Isn't this a 4? I mean, I guess it comes in with a charge by default, so like, if you play this and then you play a dwarf, you get 2 pings the next turn. Okay, so it's one of the payoffs for being in dwarf, right? Like, if you're playing a lot of dwarf, this kind of rewards you for it. It's just... I mean, it dies. It's a 3. It's got the same problem that Swordmaster does, but it doesn't even have the upside of being a 4. And this is what I mean by like dwarf cards just being kind of bad. Like, this is technically one of the payoffs, and I just don't even want to play it. It's an NR card that got put in ST by accident. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Boost an ally by 1. If you control an artifact, boost by 3. Wow, a 6 for 5. A situational 6 for 5. Elven War Dancer. This card is already boosted. Damage an enemy by 3. Wow. If only there weren't already this card and this card that didn't require you to be Philavandrel and have this in your hand when you used Philavandrel. Speaking of Bowman, generally there's like three main options for a Scoia'tael deck's 5 slots. You got Bowman, you got Archer, you got Panther. Archer and Bowman have the benefit of being elves. Panther is unfortunately a beast, but it always deals 3, so even your opponent's playing around archers with their 3-point engine units, you get to pop them with Panther. Generally, I think it's between Bowman and Archer, because I'm usually playing elf synergy. So I'm going to pick one of these two. And it really depends what you're more worried about. Being able to use this ranged ability, or if just getting max points is what you're in the market for. Dol B'thana Sentry. Whenever an enemy is moved to the other row, damage it by 1. Whenever an ally is moved to the other row, boost it by 1. So, where... what is it? This guy comes down as a 5 for 6 and gets +2 on each movement effect. As long as the movement effect targets Brigade, which is relevant. This guy comes down as a 3 for 5 and gets +1 on each movement effect. But it doesn't need to be targeting this. So you can go Sentry into Nivellen. And either like boost everything or damage everything on a row. It's not super good though. If you go like Sentry, use 3 Brewer charges, you're getting 6 for 5. That's not very good either. Yeah, I'm not really sure what this card's trying to do. Sage. Whenever you play a special card, boost itself by 2. So the funny thing about Sage is I tried playing Scoia'tael. I ended up cutting Sage from Scoia'tael, and the deck got better. It's kind of sad. You would think that like the 2-point per turn engine unit that you're building around would be good. But it's just not. Because you can't buff it the same turn it comes down, so it's just a 3 for 5. And 3 dies to everything. You're not Morvran, you can't buff it out of range. Sage should be 4 provisions. It could probably be 4 provisions pretty easily, yeah. Or if it was just like a 5 for 7. So that it didn't die as easily. That's the big problem with it, is that it just dies. At 4, you feel better about it. You don't feel as bad when it dies when it's at 4. Where at 5, it just doesn't die as often. And I think if I'm trying to build around a card like this, I'd rather it not die as often. You like 4 for 5 more? I think the difference between 4 and 5 is a little bigger than the difference between 3 and 4. Like, it's slightly harder to kill a 4 than it is to kill a 3, but it is much harder to kill a 5 than it is to kill a 4. Even if it's 6, it's 2 all-in against hard removal. Sort of, yeah. I mean, it depends how many of these you play. If you go, like, Sage, Sarah, then at least your points are a little bit diversified. Oh. Thanks, Voldemar. Save in chat. What do you buff with Sarah? I don't know, anything else? The card that I pull off my runestone? Yeah, we kind of talked about Panther with the others. All these 5s are sort of the same kind of thing. Owl Hunter, damage. There's a deck called Artifact Ithne, and they don't even consider playing this. Will I try hard next season? Probably not, no. Maybe for like the first few days of the season, but I don't know. You can't like super try hard while streaming in real time. You'll just get tilted by people at the top end sniping you when it actually matters. There's not much point. Riot Officer. Oh, this guy is like the auto-include 5. This is the one you don't cut. The versatility between damaging and boosting here matters a lot. You can either like try to keep your Swordmasters alive. If you want to like keep your Wolfsbanes good, you don't have to damage something if they just have a bunch of 3s or a bunch of 2s or something like that. You almost always are able to do something meaningful with either the damage or the boost effect. Why does this not cost +1 provisions for flexibility? Shouldn't this be a 6 then, according to the current costing system? Probably, but I don't know. They didn't really have a system. Like, when you say according to the current costing system, I don't really know what you mean. They weren't really consistent anywhere. Like, between factions, it's all totally different, and even inside of factions, the power levels and design philosophies seem to be very different. Managing conditions was within our card. Yeah, this would be like... Oh, it would be an order, right? Yeah, it would just be an order. And it wouldn't have one of these abilities. So you could actually move it and disable it. Mahakam Guard. Boosts self by the number of dwarf allies on the other row. mean, it's the same problem as like the dentist, right? Like dwarfs don't really do swarmy things. They kind of just like play a dude, make that dude big. Play a dwarf, buff a dwarf. This does the buff a dwarf part, but the problem is that it requires you to do a lot of playing a dwarf before you can buff a dwarf. We gotta wait until they post patch notes. We don't have like a time that they're going to. Right-Head Vanguard. Boost self by 1 for each elf in your hand. I mean, if you're playing a lot of elves, this card is going to be worth a lot of points. I don't know. You very rarely play this in round 1 and it's less than like a 7. It's good. You have to be endorsed for it to be good. I certainly don't think this card is too good, even though you get good raid on it almost every time. I like it a lot. Cool card. You can do 6 or 7 for 5? Yeah, exactly. And because of the way rounds tend to be like always long, especially when you're like an Ithna deck that tends to dry pass a lot, you never have to play a round where this card isn't going to be good. Because you play so many like 8, 9, 10 card rounds. Often both round 1 and round 3 are both 9+ cards. Just because your deck is trying to get 2 long rounds. Whereas in Old Gwent, if this kind of card was there, you would have a long round 1, and then you'd have like 5 cards in round 3, and this card wouldn't be as good in round 3. Because of the way the mechanics work in the game now, this kind of effect is much stronger than it would otherwise be. Thornbreaker is far more interesting and overlooked than actual Gwent. I've heard way too many people say that Thornbreaker was way too easy. Also, it's a single-player game. It's not really comparable. Only one streamer of Gwent. I don't know if it'd be lower than 4 for 5. Maybe these were 1 per 8. No, I don't think so. Why are people so scared of like bronzes getting good value? Oh, I'm the only Gwent streamer. Wow. Sad day. Four for 4 with insane versatility and utility. What? This card's great. They don't need to change this. I think Stray's Ball would be fine as a 4. You guys are way too worried about cheap cards being good. The better 4s are, the less the game becomes about just finding your expensive cards and being able to mulligan all of your cheap stuff. I'm still in the game. I don't think they keep out a deck builder. Like, Archaspore is worst case a 5. If it lives, it's generally going to get you, what, like between 7 and 10 points of value? Pretty easily. Most people have been DC'd. Yeah, but not from the deck builder. I don't know, I think powerful bronzes is a good thing. I don't even think this bronze is really all that powerful in the grand scheme of things. Movement causes your provision to yeah, well, sort of. You're playing a 4 for 4. You generally want to get more than 4 points out of your 4 provision card. Like, if this were a Nilfgaard card, what does Nilfgaard get out of a 4 provision card? Nilfgaard gets to play Magna Division. Nilfgaard gets to play Recruit. Nilfgaard gets to play the engine dude that gets +1 every time a deploy is played. Nilfgaard gets to play Alba Pikeman. Alba Spearman. Whichever one it is that it doesn't even play half the time. 4s are allowed to be good. Currently it's fine. Down the road it might play high value order cards. Sure, but it's fine. I think the problem is that other bronzes are not as good, so I think in terms of some cards seem like they need a nerf. Perhaps the solution is stuff by bronzes. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I'm advocating for. I think the game is way more interesting when the game is less about just drawing all of your good cards and more about finding ways to make use of your cheaper cards. Then all 4 provision cards should have the potential to get more than 4 points. I mean, pretty much every playable 4 provision card outside of Northern Realms does have the potential to get more than 4 points. In a lot of cases, way more than 4 points. Like, it's part of why NR was such, like, a joke. Why we were laughing half the time we were looking at NR cards. Because the NR cards just aren't very good outside of, like, a couple. Surprised you guys don't root for vanilla 5 power. Why? That's just boring. What's the point of that? The point is when you build around or your opponent plays into one of your 4s, if you play your card properly, you're getting good value on it. But honestly, like a 5 power vanilla 4 wouldn't even be that good. It's certainly worse than Magna Division. It's certainly worse than Arcaspore. You guys are focused way too much on the provisions to points ratio. Thinking like that gave us average 13. What was wrong with that? The absolute values don't really matter. It's about the relative value to the other cards. Anyway, Farseer. Deploy ranged. Reveal a random card from your deck. Special card boost self by 2. Not actually range locked. You can play this on melee, and it works. Well, sometimes works. It always goes off, but it doesn't always boost. I don't know, you need to play a lot of special cards for this to be worthwhile. What's wrong with power creep? That numbers increasing across the board is not power creep. Why does this card exist, though? I have absolutely no idea. Power creep is when new cards come out that are just stronger than old cards, and you're invalidating old cards with new expansions. That's not the same as saying everything should be a little bit better in relation to some of the cheaper cards. Where are my mods? Who else do I trust in here? Okay. Yeah, Farseer is just kind of meh. Pyrotech. Zeal. Order. Destroy an allied artifact. Damage a unit by 2. Cooldown 2. Wait, what's going on here? and obvious. What can you say with the last 6 months of beta? There were like 20 to 30 different bronzes played. All the hundreds never got included in deck because they were bad. That does nothing with power creep, though. There wasn't really any power creep with Midwinter because everything got reworked. They just had bad cards in the game. Zeal, destroy an ally effect damage unit by 2. So this was played in... I think the first time I saw this played was in the Adzakov artifact Ithne deck, which is playing Summoning Circle. So it would like play a Summoning Circle to eventually pull out Pyrotech, pop the Summoning Circle, pop like a Thunderbolt Potion later. I don't know, I tried playing this in a Dwarf deck that was trying to use the Dwarf guy that gets +2 every time he's buffed. So like after I used my Thunderbolt Potions, I would throw them with Pyrotech. Just because I needed another Dwarf in the deck to trigger Gabor. It wasn't very good there. This card's good in Trap Reaver. I could see that too. Yeah, okay, so after you've triggered your traps, you can chuck them with Pyrotech. It requires you to play artifacts, and it's tough to justify playing artifacts unless you go like really all in on artifacts because of how good artifact removal is. Yeah. Elven Swordmaster. Order melee, damage enemy by 1, cooldown 2. Whenever you play an elf, decrease cooldown by 1. So at first glance, this card's not great. So there's a couple problems. One, if you're playing elves, most of your deck doesn't really care about getting removed, so this card ends up being a removal magnet because it's the only engine in your deck. But the good thing about it is that it's a 4, so you don't really care. Like, you generally know when this is going to live or not based on the matchup, and when it's not going to live, you don't feel too bad when you just have to mulligan it. Because you're going to mulligan some number of 4s anyway, just to improve your hand quality. So you only really ever play this card in matches where it's going to be good. And in matches where 1 point per turn engine is good, you're pretty happy this is in your deck. But yeah, I had pretty low expectations of this card when I first tried it out, but once realizing that it's like, because it's a 4, there's really no opportunity cost in putting this in your deck. This card's great. Like, sure, you mulligan it probably over half the time, but who cares? When it's good, it's nuts. Your Console Pleb and Console Pleb Gwent comes back Tuesday. What's the most annoying deck to play against right now for me? I don't enjoy playing against the artifact decks. That's kind of it, though. There's obviously like sometimes you like lose the Arbalist roll against Reveal, and that feels pretty bad. But just like consistently, what deck don't I enjoy playing against? It's probably the just artifacts. Still streaming? Yeah, if you're in Deck Builder, you're able to stay in Deck Builder. Whenever an allied trap is triggered, boost self by 2. So you gotta play a lot of traps. There aren't a lot of traps to play. I don't know. This seems really bad. I never tried to play it. I don't think I ever saw anyone play it. I guess if you set up the Lacerate trap, you can play Elven Scout, and the Lacerate trap triggers the same turn that you play Elven Scout, so you get 5 for 4. It's just like then you're playing a deck with traps in it. As soon as I go to the main menu, I'll be kicked. Okay, I'll be sure not to go to the main menu then. If you order your trap, she boosts 4. Oh, wait, really? That's interesting. Huh. Hawker Healer. Deploy melee. Boost an allied unit by 2. Deploy ranged. Heal an allied unit by 4. It's a better peasant militia. It's an elf. When I started finding myself losing to Wolfsbane a lot, I tried cutting the Vryhead Neophytes for Hawker Healers, just so that I was going a little bit less wide, so that I wasn't losing quite as many points to Wolfsbane. And the ability for this to be a heal, and like sometimes you get 5 or 6 value on your 4 provision Scoia'tael bronze. I actually like this card quite a bit. The only issue is that once you cut Neophytes, it becomes quite a bit harder to reliably pull Aileron. Your Yavin becomes a little bit worse. But yeah. As a card, I like it. You don't usually get full heal value, you usually heal for like 3. Because you don't play very many units that are 5s. And opponents rarely want to knock your Aileron down to 1 for fear of Call of the Forest, so... Generally, you're... Probably like 80% of the time you play this, you're just boosting for 2. The other 20%, you're like healing for 3. And that's just fine. That's all you're really looking for. Scoia'tael Neophyte, yeah. This is the other generally default 4. It's really bad against Wolfsbane, but it allows you to pull Aileron much easier. It's kind of all there is to say. It makes Yavin a little bit better. It's not exciting. It's a 4 for 4. It does a thing. It's vulnerable to going wide. Or going wide hate, I guess. Like, you're weak to Forktails, you're weak to Wolfsbanes. But, pulls Aileron out, so you play it. Dwarven Agitator, deploy, range, boost the Dwarf in your hand by 2. This sort of is the same thing as talking about with like the other hand buff stuff. I had a lot of hope for hand buff going into Homecoming. I felt like carryover was going to be a lot more relevant than it was. But because winning round 1 was just so important, the tempo ended up being way more relevant than any kind of carryover. And this guy's tempo is pretty trash. It's also not an elf. Skirmisher. The biggest downside of Skirmisher is that he's not an elf. If I could play Skirmisher over BME, I think I'd be playing a lot more Skirmishers. This card just feels more reliable. Yes, like the problem with BME is that the Scoia'tael deck, big monsters, and like random roaches pop out, that end up making your BME dead for the entire round. Like when your opponent plays like an immune Ilmarith or an Alpha Werewolf or a Milva and just like starts stacking on that row, there's a lot of situations where you're just not able to find a BME the entire round. This as a faction seems so boring. I can agree with that. I think that's the only faction where I'd agree with that statement. While generally I think like the whole boost and damage meme is pretty stupid, it kind of applies specifically to Scoia'tael bronzes. They all kind of do the same thing. Tons of damage without conditions. Well, it's tons of damage with all like slightly different conditions. Can't log into the game. I was logged in before it went down. Let's see if it'll let me switch factions. It does! Okay, cool. I'm still in the deck builder. Okay, before we move on to Skellige, I'm going to take a quick restroom break. I'll be back in like 2 minutes. And then we will finish the last faction. Hope you guys stick around.